Test. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
All right, we'd like to welcome you out to the October 4th, 2023 business session of the Cottonwood Heights City Planning Commission. We're grateful to have staff here and all but one of our planning commissioners here and one virtually. Commissioner Ebler is joining us online. We have a couple of items to take care of today. First of all, any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest to disclose among the commissioners? No. Commissioner Ebler?
No conflicts to report.
So the first thing that is in order is a general public comments period. And we do have two business items to take care of tonight. And I'm going to ask that we reverse those. We have a public hearing on an ADU, and then we're going to talk about the citywide transportation master plan. I believe we have the ADU applicant here, and our transportation master plan may be a little bit longer. So any concerns about reordering of the agenda? Okay, with that, we will open the general public comment. Just as a reminder, this is an opportunity for individuals to make general public comments that do not relate to any project scheduled for public hearing under the business section of this agenda. As a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes for each public comment, and details. Let's see. Audrey, is your public comment, is this transportation master plan? Which one? Okay, then let's wait for yours until we get to that item. Okay. Okay, any general public comments for anyone that's here? All right, then we'll move to business item 3.2, project ADU-23-010, a public hearing and possible action on a conditional use permit requested for a detached accessory dwelling unit, ADU, in the rear yard of 1787 East, 7200 South. As a reminder, detached ADUs are allowed as a conditional use in the R1, RR1, and F1 zones of Cottonwood Heights, and we'll turn the time over to staff for the presentation.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Okay, I'm going to share my screen with Zoom. Or try to. Okay. So I guess I'll start off by saying Samantha DeSealhorst was the planner that did most of the work on this. She's out of office right now, so I offered to cover the presentation. So I'll try and answer any questions you have, but the applicant's also here today. So again, this is just for a detached ADU, which is a conditional use permit. The slide will load. Here, let me try and close this and reopen it. Okay. So again, a conditional use permit for a detached ADU. A recommendation is approval with a few standard conditions, and I'll just go through those at the end. So for context, the subject property is located at 1787 East, 7200 South. The property owner is Ilsa Wilson. She's in the audience today. It's an R18 single family zone. So detached ADUs are again a conditional use in this zone. The acreage of the property is pretty large for the zone. It's 0.30 acres, so almost a third of an acre. On the map, you can see there that it's a pretty long parcel. It extends pretty deep from the road. Here's some other context maps. It's just the same immediate vicinity map. It's right across from Ridgecrest Elementary School. And in terms of like where it is placed in the city, it's south of Highland Drive and west of Highland Drive and south of Fort Union. right near Anzac Park. So again, the proposal is a detached ADU. It's just a pretty small structure, just 10 feet by 16 feet, 160 square feet. And it would be 13 feet in height, which is much lower than the limit. The location that the applicant is proposing is in the rear yard, which is the requirement. The setbacks for detached ADUs are the same as primary dwellings in their zone. So the applicant shows on the site plan here, I'm not sure if you can see it, the text is kind of small, but the applicant shows that the ADU would be located 20 feet from the rear property line and 8 feet from the side property line on the closest side. So that meets the requirement there. And then it's kind of covered by a tree in the satellite picture here, but the applicant has 2 parking spaces in the front driveway that they intend to use for the 2 parking space requirement for detached ADUs. So they've met that requirement as well. We didn't receive any public comments by noon today. And I haven't seen any email or anything. I'm not sure if anyone's in the audience to speak to the project, but we don't have anything. And then I just had a few findings that I wanted to copy over from the staff report. I won't go through all of them in depth, but we found it to be compliant with chapter 19.75 accessory dwelling units, our zoning ordinance that addresses ADUs, and 19.84 conditional uses. And they'd be required to continually meet those provisions with this permit. We're holding the public hearing. We've given public notice 10 days in advance, and the property owner has landscaping and fencing to mitigate the visual impact of the parking areas and the ADU entrances to adjoining property owners. So we recommend approval of the project, subject to 2 pretty standard conditions, just that they obtain an approved building permit for the construction of the detached ADU, including a past final inspection, which confirms to us that the ADU is compliant with all relevant codes, building codes, and that the applicant shall obtain an approved business license to act as a landlord for the ADU. So those 2 things would be needed prior to the operation of a detached ADU. And then I have model motions here. I think this is my last slide. So unless you have questions for me, I'll step aside.
Questions for staff?
Of course. On the parking, it's a double wide, I drove by it and looked, it's a double wide driveway. So that would be for the home and the ADU, correct? So how do we define what is required additionally for an ADU?
So I believe, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but the ADU code states that 2 parking spaces that are not tandem are required for a detached ADU. So you have to be able to maneuver the 2 like required parking spaces for the primary dwelling unit with those 2 extra spaces. So 4 spaces in total. It's kind of confusing.
Okay.
And then any new space you construct, which is not the case here, but if you're building new spaces, that has to be in the side or rear yard.
Okay.
But they have these spaces already in the front. Which
So
meets
the
code.
existing driveway and garage, I guess, counts as they already have adequate. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question I had is short-term rental is not allowed with an ADU period, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Long-term is okay. And it requires that the owner remain as living in the residence.
I believe so.
Right, that's
Yes.
correct, right?
Yeah, the owner of record has to be either in the ADU or in the house
In
on
the
a
ha-
permanent
in the-
basis.
okay.
Yep,
So when it says landlord, that's talking about any kind of long-term rental.
yes,
Okay,
yeah. So short-term rentals are prohibited, and then they sign an affidavit saying, I own this property, I live here full-time. We don't care if they live in the house or the ADU, but
ADU,
they
right.
have to be on the property.
right, perfect. Thank you.
Any
Can you define short-term versus long-term, please?
Less than or more than 30 days.
other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the applicant have any desire to share anything with the commission? Okay. Okay, time for deliberation. What are your thoughts? Excuse me, let's open this for public comment. Thank you for that. You have anyone that's here to make a public comment on item 3.2? And please, if you can tell us your name,
My name
you'll
is
have
Catherine,
3 minutes,
Catherine Burns.
3 minutes to make your comment.
My husband is Kendall Brady, who's the owner of record of the property right behind her house. And she's been in conversation with him and we have no problem with this going forward. And so I just wanted to make that note.
Thank you very much. That is extremely helpful.
Am I allowed to ask questions too?
No. But you can state a question. We may not choose to answer it.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Chappie. I live just to the west of the property there. And so a couple things that, I guess I don't know the ordinances and the zoning, but it seems if you're in a single family zoned area that you could create a rental space that someone else has to potentially police to see if they're doing it properly. I don't know that doesn't make sense to me, really. And that sort of puts it on somebody else that shouldn't be bothered with that, really, in terms of whether it's short term, long term, or whatever. So I would assume that this building also it's going to require plumbing and tie into the sewer system and all that stuff as well, which is a big, for where it's located on the property, it's kind of a disruption, of everything else. So it seems like there's a lot of, I have, questions about that in terms of how it's going to impact the neighborhood. Not to mention the fact that to me, having a rental on a single family dwelling that's separate from the main house seems a little bit, backdoor-ish. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you so much for your public comment. Any other public comments related to item 3.2? We will then close the comment period for item 3.2 and we'll move to deliberation.
This project excites me, primarily from the reason that the legislature had passed as a state, this 2019, is that correct, Mike Johnson?
It might have been 2020, 21, maybe. I think it was a little more recent.
Okay.
In that
yeah.
ballpark. Yeah.
2019 to 2020.
Yeah, somewhere in
Yeah.
there.
So, and the thing that I really enjoyed about ADUs is just the ability to create better affordability. And that's what the state was doing. This is not a city situation. The state legislature really focused on creating affordability and accessibility, especially, east side. And that's one of the things that really excites me about this. And it seems like this project is, kind of checking every box across the board, checking compliance, building code boxes. So it's very interesting to me. And this is the first one that I've seen here at Cottonwood Heights in my 1 year here. So thank you for your deliberation going through that.
Other thoughts? To staff, can you clarify relative to plumbing and electrical and utilities and sewage and so forth?
Yeah, any ADU has to meet all the building code requirements for habitable space. So, whatever egress windows and electrical and plumbing, it cannot have a separate electrical meter. That being said, there's inherently going to be work that needs to be done on the property, but you can run electrical to a shed or a garage or any other detached building. So it'll have to follow building permit procedures and get inspections and things like that, but it is allowed.
Is a separate sewer tie-in allowed in a?
I think our code says no second utility meters are permitted. So it's all extended from the main utility line. The purpose of that being having separate meters is more indicative of a duplex, a twin home situation where you can start to blur the lines between an accessory dwelling unit and just a second primary dwelling unit on the site.
Something that's not metered like sewage. doesn't seem to be covered by that. So
I think all I'd say is they have to get permission from, we have a code that says no separate meters, and then they have to get permission from Cottonwood Improvement District, the sewer utility.
What kind of regulation does the city have for long-term rentals, 30 days and above?
The only restriction is it can't be short-term.
Yeah.
Finding evidence of that and enforcing that is a process. It happens, but that's why we do have the applicant sign an affidavit saying, I understand the requirements. I'm not going to do short-term rental here. I live on the property. I understand the rules. So it becomes an enforcement issue if they skirt those requirements, but anywhere in the city right now, if there's a long-term rental, it's not regulated. As long as you have one family in that dwelling unit, whether it's a house or an ADU, and it's long-term, it's allowed. We don't require any additional documentation or anything to do that.
Except the building or a business license?
For ADUs, I'm just talking rentals, long-term rentals in general. Any of us could rent our entire home out and not live there to one family. That's a rental property. You're not living there, but that's allowed. An ADU, the owner of record has to be there, and then the ADU where the renting family is can be one family, and they have to occupy that for more than 30 days consecutively.
And that does require a
That-
license.
ADUs require building permits and inspections, and then an annual business license. Yes.
And that annual business license from a process standpoint goes through full compliance, life safety, everything.
Yeah,
Around-
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so business licenses are reviewed. They're sent to the health department, the fire department, and zoning, all for review.
Thank you.
Other questions, thoughts, or concerns? Commissioner Evler, anything to add?
Nothing to add. Thanks for pinging me. I think this is relatively straightforward, and I remember back about this time in 2021, kind of the rush to address some of the ordinances because of the ADU changes in the state law. So just kind of cool to see it come through I think this is the first one.
Thank you. Are we ready for the question?
I move to approve project ADU 23-010 based on the recommended findings and conditions listed in the staff report dated October 4th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Shelton and a second from Commissioner Steinman. Any further discussion of the motion? Are you ready for the question? Okay. Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Polson. Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Steinman,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Evler,
Aye.
and Commissioner Mills votes yes. Just as a comment to the three parties present, please be good neighbors, communicate well. I think these are new and there's nervousness, and most of these things in Cottonwood Heights are often resolved with good communication. So thank you for following the process and be a good neighbor. So thank you, everybody. We'll move on to the next item, project GPA-23-001, a public hearing and possible action on an updated citywide transportation master plan. And we will turn the time over to staff for a presentation. And we're grateful for Adam's efforts on this. We brought this back a number of times and he's gone to some diligent effort. I may preload this a little bit that we have a lot of information regarding level of service and in addition, some additional legwork that I'm aware that the Safe Streets process has been very, very exciting to at least one and maybe others on the council. And so to his credit, Adam has done a lot of legwork to make sure that that's covered as well. So as we hear this, recognize that some of this, you'll see things that are separated and Adam, I might encourage you as we go through this to focus level of service, we understand focuses on traffic, but the financial implications for why we would continue to need level of service in addition to safe streets, that even though those may seem like they're opposing forces, why it would be important for us to kind of cover both of those, because and I really appreciate that you've done some extra legwork. I'm sure we've not made this fast for you, but I hope that by doing it here, it may make it easier when it gets to the city council. So thanks for your legwork.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners. So this is a presentation on the Transportation Master Plan. We gave one to this commission probably about 2 months ago. So this one is similar to the last one, and it does include some additional information. The primary purpose of a transportation master plan is to identify the projects that are eligible for impact fees. In 2019, the city completed a 10-year transportation master plan. And it was based on, so it's based on a 10-year transportation master plan. And based on that study, it did not identify any impact fees in moving forward with any impact fees. This 2023 transportation master plan is serving as a unifying document. It consolidates all the previous transportation master plans that have been done by the city, including the Wasatch Boulevard Gravel Pit Master Plan, and also the Fort Union Master Plan. And this transportation master plan also includes the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan. So it's basically a consolidation of all the existing plans that the city has done. But again, the primary purpose of a master plan was to assess whether or not the city needed or the city was able to collect impact fees. And the study did not find anything. So this master plan, the goals of it were primarily to improve active transportation networks and to promote alternative transportation use, to identify the future projects that would improve pedestrian safety, walkability, and traffic flow, and also to identify solutions to accommodate future growth, road safety, and road classification. It included a standardization of the traffic cross sections for different roadways, and it also expanded the transportation model from 10 years to 2050, so a full 30 years. The first thing, we're going to go through 3 of the results of this master plan. The first is the roadway cross sections. The second would be the recommended pedestrian improvements, and then the third are the recommended roadway improvements. The first cross sections, there are 4 different groups in the city for cross sections. There are local roads, urban collectors, urban arterials, and urban core arterials. And what this master plan set out to do was it standardized the cross section for each one of those classifications. What is in a cross section? You have all of the road width, you have your sidewalk, park strip, curb and gutter, and bike lanes or pedestrian facilities. Just a quick rundown, you have the local road width of 56 feet. One thing to note is that Fort Union Boulevard had its own designated cross section, and that was a result of the master plan that was done by the city a number of years ago that identified specific facilities on Fort Union Boulevard. If we quickly go through these, well, first this is the map of the existing roadway network, and you can see Fort Union Boulevard is identified in green as an urban core arterial. And then you also have the urban collectors, which are identified in orange, which are typically 2300 East, 2700 East, Creek Road, and so urban arterials, you have 1300 East and 30th East. We'll just quickly look through these. These are the cross sections that are shown on the master plan. One thing to note is that we made every attempt to include pedestrian facilities in these cross sections. This is the urban collector cross section. It's 2-lane and 3-lane. So the 2-lane urban collector is a 66-foot cross section. And the three-lane urban collector is a 75-foot cross-section. One of them is shown with parking, and then the other one is shown with a bike lane. Three-lane urban arterial has a cross-section of also 75 feet, and it also shows either a bike lane or an 8-foot shoulder along with the travel lanes. It's the 5-lane urban arterial, which would be 13th East or 30th East. And urban core arterial, this is Highland Drive, and that would be the only 7-lane road, although Union Park is also 7 lanes. Urban core arterial and 5-lane urban core arterial. And finally, you have Fort Union Boulevard, which is showing a 3-lane urban core arterial and a 5-lane urban core arterial. On the 3-lane urban arterial, it's showing a 20-foot section for a future pedestrian trail. And that would be located between Wasatch Boulevard and 30th East. And the urban core arterial 5-lane is west of 30th East all the way down to 1300 East. And it's showing a it's what's called a cycle track, which is where you have a grade separated bike path and a sidewalk that's separated from the roadway. So, and you can see that on both sides of the road, a 6-foot bike lane and a 6-foot sidewalk on Fort Union Boulevard. The second part of this presentation is regarding the active transportation facilities. There are 3 types of active transportation facilities that are identified in the various engineering manuals. Level 1 is a facility that is grade separated from the roadway. So it has a physical barrier that separates the trail or pedestrian facility from the roadway. So you have a curb and gutter, something that is moving the facility off the road with a physical barrier. So that would be a cycle track or pedestrian trail. A level 2 is a facility that's located on the roadway, but is designated for pedestrian facilities exclusively. So that would be a buffered bike lane. And level 3 is a facility that's shared between bicyclists and vehicles, and that would be a shared bike lane. The first thing that you're looking at here is the existing active transportation backbone in Cottonwood Heights. You can see there's buffered bike lanes on Bengal Boulevard. You can see the big Cottonwood Canyon Trail identified in orange. And there are a number of shared roadways and buffered bike lanes. And so this is what's existing currently in the city. And we move to the next slide. This is what's being recommended in the Transportation Master Plan. And its origins come from the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan. And it's identifying a number of new multi-use paths through Cottonwood Heights, including one on Fort Union Boulevard, one on Highland Drive. And on Fort Union Boulevard, you'd have the cycle track trail. And then it's also identifying a trail on Wasatch Boulevard and on Danish Road. And also you can see the buffered bike lane on Bengal Boulevard. So these are, and then down in the right, you can see the list of recommended projects that it matches what's in the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan. So the third part is the model that was used to develop this Transportation Master Plan. This model is based off of Wasatch Front Regional Council's TAS model, which is a model that is developed for the entire Salt Lake County region. And it includes the employment and residential populations for different areas. What this model is, it's a high-level model. This is not a site-specific model. It's not detailed, like it doesn't model each car, which would be called a synchro model. This is more based off of daily volume, daily traffic. The synchro or the VSIM model, that is not included in this study. So this is more of a 10,000-foot analysis of the entire city.
Adam, can I ask you just on that issue, the TAS model versus something that's more site specific? Is there any anticipation at what point it would make sense either budgetarily from a financial standpoint or just in the interest of the city. I mean, to my understanding, at a certain point, that individual data specific to Cottonwood Heights, and I mean, that's heavy equipment and manpower in order to do that. Do you anticipate a date at which we would start doing that or want to start doing that as a city?
Well, when you're looking at a specific project, you would do a traffic study that's related to it. When the city seeks funding through Wasatch Front Regional Council, they would look at more of a detailed analysis to support the projects that are being proposed. So as part of the design, that is one aspect of the design that could be utilized.
And so if the council, just again, just hypotheticals here, if there was a desire to really drill down, they could request to just say, hey, listen, we want to study on such and such.
Yeah, there's a number of different engineering studies that can be completed from, looking at the signal timing or looking at a specific corridor and trying to, if you wanted to make, changes to that roadway, that's certainly one way to go, is to look, you would do a traffic study that would have more of a detailed analysis of like the turning movements at the intersections. This is looking at the level of service of the roadway itself.
And that makes a lot of sense. I
Yeah.
mean, the level of service, the only conflict I would anticipate is that WFRC obviously has a vested interest in making sure that people move and flow quickly and easily through communities. And we have residents with significant concern about people flowing through. They're not, planning on either staying with somebody in Cottonwood Heights or doing business here. So we kind of end up with people coming through that are not, and that may be hard
Yeah.
to target that to say, okay, what is their intended
Yeah, this is
destination?
looking at more of because it is including the employment population, which is the people coming in and out of the city. And that's how they come up. On the next slide after this one, it shows that map that shows the different numbers. What we have here is the population data that was used in the model. We are in the year 2020, so you have 32,700. You can see that the population of Cottonwood Heights, based off of the census, has declined just slightly. The estimated population that's shown here of 41,800, majority of which is coming from any anticipated growth up on the gravel pit. So the transportation model is using economic data, socioeconomic data that includes both the future demand on the roadway from the existing population and then the growth in the valley itself, right? This is the model. This is the map of the model that our consultant created. And these numbers here are the travel demand, and it's based off of, again, the employment and the estimated future 2050 population in the city. It includes Wasatch Boulevard gravel pit. So level of service, this model or the recommendations are based off of a level of service that when you get to below a D is when you would say that you're reaching that threshold of unacceptable. On the right, you can see the volume that they use to establish that level of service of D, and that comes from AASHTO, which is the engineering publication. A level of service is measuring the delay on the road based off of the total number of cars in a day. And an unacceptable level of service is typically below a D. So an E or an F is where you start seeing the congestion. Now what you're looking at here is the long-term no build scenario, and this would be a 2050 scenario. So it's still, 20 years out or almost 30. So the unacceptable level of service is shown in red. And those are the volumes of the roadway in 2050.
Adam, did the consultants take this to 2040 as an alternative without the gravel pit?
They took So there is a short-term no build.
Mhm.
The original, the one in 2019 did not include the gravel pit. But they did include the gravel pit in this. I do want to say, if you look at the recommendations for the roadway, what they found was, so if we go back to the impact fee analysis, that the future development in the city did not have a large enough impact to warrant an impact fee. The percentage was very low. Typically, when you see impact fees, it's because you have to build a road for a new development. And Cottonwood Heights being a built-out city, didn't see that type of, pressure being put on the roadway. I guess most of the pressure is coming from the existing population. Then, like you said, that regional, traffic that comes through our city. The recommended roadway projects, the first thing to note is that none of these projects are recommending adding additional lanes or widening the road for additional lanes. The lanes that are being recommended on roads such as 2300 East, 2600 East, and also there's, I believe, also 17th East, are going from 2 to 3 lanes, so adding a dual left turn lane or a center lane. None of these projects are recommending widening the road for additional lanes. Majority of these projects are trying to address pedestrian safety and walkability elements. That would include building sidewalks on 2300 East. If you go through the recommended projects, they're divided into phases. There are intersection projects that are shown here as well. Fort Union Boulevard and 2300 East, which is a project that would, add turn lanes, a right turn pocket, and then also reconfigure the intersection to include the ability for bikes to safely navigate through the intersection. Wasatch Boulevard, it recommends pedestrian safety and walkability with a multi-use trail and reconfiguring the roadway from 2 to 3 lanes. And so this is what's been recommended. I believe this is the last slide. This is the same project shown on the map. So Fort Union Boulevard, Park Center Drive, it's recommending going from 2 to 3 lanes, adding a center turn lane on Park Center Drive. And the last thing I would say is the operational projects. There's a lot of those are listed as operational projects. And what an operational project is one that's improving safety and traffic flow without adding lane capacity. So whether that's a center island or some sort of configuration of the roadway, it's to improve traffic flow without increasing, asphalt for additional lanes. So that concludes the presentation.
Okay, I think we're ready for our questions here. Who wants to start?
How was it determined, the projects, the priority of projects?
So the projects came from the 2019 Capital Facilities Master Plan.
Okay.
And then looking at the model and going through the needs of the city. So essentially, a lot of the intersection ones are where we anticipate there being a delay. Some of these intersections don't have built out turn pockets.
Right.
So,
And some of the, I think one, I can't remember which one said, I think level of service was an E or something already. So, okay. And then the timing is 10 years, I think, or 9 years, maybe for the first
the first phase
grouping.
is shown 10 years.
10 years.
And it certainly is, it's just recommendations. It's not, this is just kind of, like the original intent is to look at, the state code requires that cities do an impact fee analysis. And that's what the primary purpose of the model is. And then after that, you're looking at, capacity and then making recommendations.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Back to the buffered bike lanes.
Yeah.
are those, where you're proposing buffered bike lanes, are those restricted from vehicle parking?
So there are, you could do a buffered bike lane with parking. The cross sections that are shown here have either the bike lane or the parking. I don't believe that city code prohibits parking in a bike lane, but I could be wrong about that.
I believe that's
I
correct.
think you're correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a way for us to regulate that and potentially?
It would be a choice with the ordinance, whether or not you could, prohibit parking in a bike lane. That would be something that would be listed in the code.
Adam, another thought, I mean, just as we, I think about my own business on Highland Drive, about 78 South, where the curve in Highland Drive is, there's a bike lane that's striped, but it in essence is just widened the road and increased the speed since they striped it and widened it. And I'm not using a speed gun, but I'm imagining that it's approaching 50 miles an hour at times just because it's wider. Without putting posts in or completely isolating it, are there any other solutions to keep people into the car lane versus the bike lane, especially on turns around town?
So for bike lanes, especially shared bike lanes, you're not recommended to place a shared bike lane on a road that exceeds 35 miles an hour. That's why they came up with the buffered bike lane to kind of create that safety buffer. What we're recommending is a lot of taking those facilities and giving them their own designated trail or cycle track. And all a cycle track is a trail split on both sides of the road, essentially, right? And then there's obviously, traffic calming that could be utilized to reduce traffic speeds.
I'm anticipating that when you get to the council, that they're going to be looking for your traffic calming suggestions and having just a whole a la carte menu of available things that are done other places. It's such an effective thing. We watch on Wasatch Boulevard once you get past 94th South and you get over into Sandy, and they've divided it. They've got a median there, and the super highway of Wasatch Boulevard drops almost in half in terms of the natural speed. Anyway, just that I think just having some available options, I think, for traffic calming, I think would be especially as we anticipate the Fort Union master plan and town center, and just thinking ahead a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We'll keep that in mind.
Commissioner Ebler, you got thoughts here?
Just trying to get to the mute button. I do, but I want to skip myself for right now.
Commissioner Polson, any clarifications? This is your first bite of the apple here. We've been down this road a little bit, so any clarification slides that you'd like to see again? Is this is the level of service can be controversial at times because it's focused on traffic flow, and there is definitely an element in our city that is focused on safe streets and wants the speeds to go down and down, and wants us to put way less emphasis on moving cars. And Adam's trying to navigate that, between both here, moving people walking, moving people on bikes, and moving people in cars, and trying to balance that with the future.
I just add from a planning standpoint, level of service and traffic flow doesn't necessarily correspond with speed. Design is a big deal, and we touch on it here, but design can mitigate speed while still maintaining a good level of service for cars to move efficiently, but also safely and at a safer speed than what we see. So you can have all these things be compatible. The level of service it's an important metric when you're looking at roads in the city, even if you're emphasis is on safety and adding active transportation and trails and things like that. So all these things kind of live and work together. So the important element in the planning department working with engineering on this is to make sure all of our plans are speaking the same language, because they're all achieving slightly different things. But I do think the clarification is helpful, that that level of service doesn't necessarily mean widen the road and make it faster. That we can still achieve our goals of making roads safer and slower while maintaining an acceptable level of service.
Yeah, the operational projects are not recommending widening the road. They would focus on pedestrian safety and improving traffic flow at the same time. So whether that included, protected crosswalks or forms of traffic calming, all that would be worked out in design. This is just kind of, a high level looking down at all the different roads in the city and their existing capacity.
Chairman Mills, can we go back to the slide with the three configurations? I had a question on that I did want to touch on a little bit.
There were a couple of those on configuration, the cross sections.
I think it was like one or two back from that.
On the
Was
cross.
it the one with the 1, 2, and 3? Wait, I think you just hit it. No, not that one. It's the actual the streetscapes.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so for level 2, and I don't know if this has been considered or not, but I've seen this in other cities, and the one that kind of springs to mind, obviously different country, but I think Copenhagen in Denmark, they use the cars as a buffer, so they swap the bike and the car parking, so the cars become a physical buffer to the bicycles, and actually probably present a bit more less interference or less issues with kind of the mixed modality of this, because for a car to park here, you would have to cross a bike lane, versus if the car was a physical barrier, the bikes are on the inside. And I didn't know if that was a considered configuration or not.
Yeah, the picture that you're looking at for level 2 comes from NACDO.
Okay.
And they do have that same configuration with the parking on the inside of the road, and then I believe that would be more of a level 1, because they usually include some sort of landscape buffer as well, some sort of curb as well, which is kind of what the picture on level 1 is in front of the Views 23, I believe it's called, which is the where the trail is off the roadway. So, but yeah, that is shown in NACDO. That's something that we would consider in design.
You see any limitations for that design?
I would, it's usually seen in downtown areas. I believe they might have some of that in Provo. Yeah, they have it in downtown Salt Lake as well.
I think it's a fantastic consideration, just as, again, for that a la carte menu.
And that's kind of what we were looking at for Fort Union, was doing, kind of getting it so it's not a buffered bike lane, it's more, protected.
And another, I recently saw this when I was traveling, and I'm trying to figure out where I saw it. But someone, it was kind of similar to, they had a bike lane, a dedicated bike lane, and I had seen that before. But then they had, like, if you see in the level 2 picture where you have the cross hatching in that area, they actually put up physical bollards to just more or less kind of define the space between the bike path on the road and the travel lane. And I don't know if that's a consideration or whatnot. It obviously has some issues logistically with snow removal, et cetera, but.
Yeah, I believe that's something that's been discussed and with buffered bike lanes in the past. And there are, maintenance concerns.
Yeah.
During the winter.
Okay, thanks.
Other thoughts or questions?
I suspect we don't have the information here, but Cottonwood Heights lends itself well to bicycle riding. And I'd like to see it continue that way. And I'd like bicyclists to be safe. Too often when I'm on a bicycle, and I know you're a rider, several of us are, I've had cars come so close to hitting me, it kind of really raises my heart rate a little bit. So anything that can be done to increase the safety, I appreciate. And I think will lend to the livability of our environment. I don't know if we have stats on how many bicycle accidents we have. I'm sure those stats are around here somewhere, but I suspect it's a significant number. And I think anything we can do to improve the safety of bicyclists would be well received. If we can do that without exhausting the budget, would be nice.
And I would add to that, just as we, I encourage us to regularly buy the Strava data to make sure we know what the people are doing on their bikes and walking, and that may, in lieu of a micro study, may give us some of that same data. And obviously not everybody has a wearable device, but that gives us a fairly significant number. I mean, when the TAS data shows that there aren't that many bikes, as it turns out, that go between the intersection of at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon Road or Big Cottonwood Canyon at Fort Union and Wasatch. And the number of bikes that go through there it's a crazy number of bikes, despite how potentially dangerous it is because of the need to access all of the canyons back and forth. So I hope we continue to get creative on the data collection. I'm firmly in support, and I would encourage us to push the council so you've got the resources you need as you're trying to figure out, okay, where are they at, where would they like to be? And those are hard questions to answer with, and I think that this is a Herculean task, to be honest, Adam, like trying to kind of forecast 20 years out, 30 years out. So other questions or clarifications?
I believe Commissioner Ebler was speaking about some kind of a physical presence in the barrier between the bike lane and the regular road. And I'm thinking like a rumble strip or something like that. Would that increase the maintenance problems with snowplows and things?
Well, there are certain designs to include like a physical bollard or a rumble strip. The maintenance issue is related to snow plowing and having to, get the snow off the
Right.
road and that, those things would need to be removed. Or the plow would, or they.
A rumble strip, would
Well,
that
you
interfere
could
with?
groove. So yeah, there
You
is
could
a
groove it.
groove that you could do. I was thinking of the above ground rumble strip.
Well,
So-
no, I would say that the challenge too with rumble strips is that as a cyclist, those things are really, really rough. But even the raised bumps, or even the ones that are the square reflectors that are almost flush. And frankly, it's important that the cyclists try to stay out of the road, especially if they've got a dedicated lane. If they need to slow down, they need to slow down too. But trying to find appropriate ways to separate them a little bit. You're right. The candlesticks are rough to have to remove those every time we're plowing snow. Other questions or thoughts from staff or from the commission? Okay. Are we at a stage where we want are we looking for a motion or a recommendation to be made?
Yeah, that'd be great. We do have a couple public comments here too, so just.
Oh,
as a reminder.
fantastic. Okay.
But yeah, it is ready whenever the commission's ready. As a reminder, this is a master plan. It's legislative. So this is a recommendation on to city council, and then we pick it up and do the same thing with city council.
Okay. Let's go to public comment. So we have a comment card from Audrey Pines. Thank you for waiting so patiently, Audrey. And we got some comments from Audrey that included other things related to this. So I'm going to say in lieu of the fact that you covered other things in your comments, typically I don't believe that you comment twice on something. I'm going to just say that the stuff you sent to us was more
I'm here again.
general public comment, and that this is more specific to the transportation master plan. Is
Yeah.
that
I
okay?
didn't actually realize we were going to talk about this specifically. So actually, the first question I have is actually towards Mike Johnson, but I've been clogging through this thing, which I appreciate all your work, you guys, if you're actually trying to read through this thing. And my council person, Ellen Irwit, got us involved with it with the, where the grants. And, you know, there's a lot of social engineering in these, and I'm not sure how much we're attached to some of the crazy things that are in this, which has nothing to do exactly what we're talking about now, but it is under the big transportation bill, like cameras and shut off switches and crazy stuff. So this is a conversation that I think I would like more information on, how attached we are to losing our sovereignty of our city for some of these things. Then we all love Wasatch Boulevard on south of 9400 South, but I have to say, I still get tailgaters on that. The thing that gives me sort of empowerment is speeding signs. So when someone's on my butt and I drive by a sign that says 35, they kind of back off, or they just drive around me on the other side of the road. 3500 South and Bagel Boulevard, I live right there. We don't want a roundabout there. We've talked to numerous autistic and handicapped people that live there. They're not a fan of it. No one ever talks about it, but we don't really want it. So, and the other thing I wanted to bring up is the war on idling that seems to be going on. I've been watching, first time I saw it was in Mill Creek, and Salt Lake is hot, cold. I don't see people sitting around in their cars just idling. My council person is obsessed with putting signs up. We're looking for parking. We're not allowed to idle. And part of the roundabout thing is she doesn't want any cars to stop. And I think sometimes stopping cars is good. So I just wanted to bring that up, that, you know, a lot of us are like, what's with the war on the idling in our cars when it's hot and cold? Maybe grandma's in the car, maybe dog's in the car. So that's all. I'm just curious about the social engineering part that's in it, was kind of bothering me, and a couple other comments like on Bengal Boulevard. And, you know, really fast, I wanted to say, we were talking about the parking around Alpha Coffee really fast. And it kind of has to do with everything we've been talking about. There's a lot of parking around Alpha Coffee. I love Alpha Coffee. I would love to do a deck there so that everybody can enjoy our beautiful views. If they run out of parking, there's parking in the hotel, there's parking across the street, there's street parking. There's two other coffee shops. There's the coffee shop on 30th and what is it, Cottonwood Heights. There's what's the new one, Copla, that just opened. Isn't that sort of the natural spreading, you know, that they don't take reservations? So isn't that part of the natural, you know, getting rid of people? And also in Cottonwood Heights, really fast, it's right on bike trails, it's right on walking trails, on a hiking trail. Don't we want people going there that are not in their cars? So I just wanted to throw that out there while we were talking about everything tonight. Thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you, Audrey. Any other public comments on the transportation master plan? Do we have any online? Not seeing any. Okay. Okay, we will close the public comment then on this item. Okay, any further discussion on this? We've been discussing it thus far.
I would just say I'm glad that there is a master plan rather than just letting things happen. It's nice to know people are thinking ahead.
And as a reminder, this is we expect some fluidity in this too. So this is not one of those we're done and it's in stone and it never is to be changed again. We anticipate that this is malleable and technology will change our growth projections, or just that, projections, and staff are very, very aware of that. Okay, we've asked Adam to come back one time already. You feel comfortable that we're ready to make a recommendation at this point? Okay. Do we have a model motion from staff?
I don't think we do have one. So you'd just be recommending approval or denial of that project number to the city council.
Okay.
I recommend approval of forwarding the transportation master plan as provided by staff to city council.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Anderson and we have a second from Commissioner Ebler. What's in order now is any further discussion of the motion? For clarification, the project is project GPA 23-001.
And I correct, we're forwarding a recommendation. That's your motion, that we forward a recommendation.
And again, I don't want us to, don't feel any pressure. If we feel like we need more time on this, we are not in a hurry. If there are questions and clarifications, but if we don't have any questions or clarifications, I think it's incumbent on us to not sit on this any longer than you feel like we need to. Any thoughts, other thoughts, concerns, considerations before we move to a vote? Are you ready for the question? Okay. On this motion, do we have somebody that can read back the motion for us?
Commissioner, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Please, go ahead.
Microphone, so sorry. Commissioner Lucy Anderson made a motion to recommend project GPA 23-010. Recommending transportation master plan to the city council. Second by Commissioner Epler.
Just for clarification, it's project GPA 23001.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much.
Okay. Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Polson,
Yes.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Steinman,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Ebler,
Aye.
and Commissioner Mills, yes. And I would add to that as you proceed, Adam, just the discussion we had about traffic calming. I appreciate the communication and I'm expecting that this will be highly engaged with our city council and also with the citizenry as we get there. And as we continue to talk about walkability and bikeability, appreciate where your head's at. So, and thank you again to staff on the planning side as well as on the road side. This is, again, I'm grateful that we're not siloed in this city, that you two talk to each other. That's a great thing for all of us. So, okay. That's all we have for tonight. I'll entertain one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Smith and a second from Commissioner Anderson to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Our next meeting will be October